I just had a really great day. I woke up fresh this morning, kind of on a high. Jared from 3 Minute Board Games had commented on a BGG post that was in relation to a video that I just done, giving me all kinds of advice. I was literally on cloud 9 going to bed, and it felt really great. Then something amazing happened. I'm staring at my phone in the morning and a notification comes through. It says Rado has mentioned you on a video, and I about fell out of my chair, like head. Honestly, it felt like, I don't know, it kind of felt like an out-of-body experience, as lame as that may sound. And I watched, and he legitimately mentioned the channel and the video I had done around being a board game creator, or trying to be a board game creator. And I immediately went around my house, showed every person individually, all my kids, my wife. And then, of course, I had to go out and celebrate, so we went out to brunch, you know? Who doesn't go out to brunch after Rado mentions your channel? Really felt like I had made it. And then, of course, after that, I had to top it all off with going to my friendly local game store. So I was off to Mox's boarding house. It's not one I go to a lot. It's a little further away, but we were in the neighborhood and it made a lot of sense. So I went in there and it was pretty exciting. I saw some stuff in there that was brand new. And I got a theme, and if you clicked on the thumbnail, you probably know what that is. It's small box games, and I'm trying them out, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. First on the list is something I'm really excited about in Floating Floors. Last year, I think it was like last year, it was on Kickstarter, and I kind of hem and hawed. I felt like this was something that I wasn't going to find in retail, but I've eventually passed on it, and I'm really glad that I was able to find it. Guff Studios publishes this. It's designed by Takashi Sawada. It's a 2 to 4 player game, and it's a lot of dexterity / strategy. And that's what really interested me on this guy. I'm not the biggest fan of dexterity games. There's, in fact, off the top of my head, Kabuto Sumo was all right. I think I actually eventually traded it away, but this is a little bit different because it's not just dexterity. There's a lot of strategy that goes on with this game. So there's these player tiles, I believe they're called Bansons in the game. They surround the map, and you have to make that way around that map after building floating floors, trying to get next to your Bansons to collect them, all while trying not to make the floors topple. And why would they topple? Well, the floors are supported with these little wooden meeples called jutsus. And on every turn, you roll 3 die and you collect the jutsus that are matching on the die, and you get to use them to place them around the map. They can only go on these terrain spaces, not on the water spaces. As soon as you place one on the map, you can place a floating floor on top of it. And you'd say, well, one's going to be pretty unstable. And that is completely true. It's totally up to you. You don't have to use all of them. You can use them later on. You can place the jutsus on top of a floating floor in order to balance it out so it doesn't tip over. If you're smart, you're probably building a base for yourself, so you have some maximum maneuverability. So there's a couple of movement rules. So obviously you're trying to get across the map, be able to collect your player tiles or the Bansons, but you have to end your turn on the right color space. So if you're the white ninja, you have to end your turn on a white space. You can take as many moves as you want, or it's kind of a push your luck, because if one of those platforms were to topple, you immediately end your turn. And the cool part is the opposing player gets to set that tile up any way they want. They can set it up in any orientation they want, which would help them be able to line up the proper color squares so they can pick up their jutsus. They can also booby trap it where they're only putting a couple of those jutsus underneath the floor. So when that player eventually has to move, it's going to have some form of imbalance. And the only way to balance that is by placing another jutsu on your turn while you're moving your meeple to balance it. It's this really kind of crazy balancing game. I say balance like a million times, but I guess that's what it is. It's all about balance. And then when you get adjacent to your Banson tile, you have to rotate. So it's not just in the right orientation for your hand. It feels really uncomfortable. And I found we messed that up a lot, because sometimes you're placing jutsus on top of cards. Like you can place a, your color jutsu on top of an opposite color square so you can land on it. But then you're sitting on this platform and you're having to move this tile in 90 degrees to collect your Banson, but inevitably it absolutely topples. I mean, this game is really unique because of the strategy and dexterity put together. It's not just about having a steady hand. Well, you have to have that steady hand. You're really thinking about how to set these tiles up in order to maybe adversely affect your opponent. I think this is a great game for kids. My son and I had fun playing it. I will say that there's a certain level of dexterity needed so they don't rage quit on you, but if they have a steady hand, you know, you guys may want to check it out. I actually highly recommend this. It's probably my favorite dexterity game as of yet. That's not saying much though. So the next on the list, Isle of Trains All Aboard. You know, I see trains, I'm kind of a sucker for them. My whole board game career really started with Ticket to Ride, and my wife made us play that thing into the ground, and actually I thought I didn't like board games after playing it for the 100th time. Little did I know there's actually more board games to play. So regardless, when I see trains, my ears perk up a little bit. This comes from Dranda Games, designed by Seth Jaffe and Dan Keltner. 1 to 4 players, and this is really just like a hand management delivery game, I suppose, but not in the sense in which you travel around a map and deliver stuff, not pick up and delivery. And this is a little different. You know, it has nothing to do with route building. It's all about building your train, and it has nothing to do with engine building, just building a train that happens to have an engine on the front of it. So really the core of the game is you build the train by paying the cost of the train with cards in your hand. The reason why you want to build the train is you get points from each card that you add on. You can also upgrade each of those cards to be more points, but really what you're trying to do and what drives the game is the delivery mechanic. Another action that you can take is loading these trains. And I think one of the really cool things about this is the multi-use nature of the cards, because like I said, you can use them to actually build your train. They're also currency to pay for the train. Then there's resource symbols on them that you could flip them upside down, tuck them behind the train, and now those are resources ready to be delivered. The really unique thing is you don't just load your train, you can load your opponent's train. And that was the hook for me on this one, which is if I load my opponent's train, obviously I'm giving them a benefit. They're getting a free load action, they're not spending a card, and they can go and deliver that thing. However, there's really powerful bonuses at the top of each of these trains that can only be activated if you load somebody else's trains. So if you load in your own train, it's not going to activate. Some of the things that you get is getting extra cards, extra points. You can even take extra actions. So that balance between giving your opponent something good and you getting something better is really kind of a tough decision to navigate, but it still feels good. I never really loved the cards like in Wingspan, for example, that you'd play and you and your opponent get the same thing. If I'm giving something up, I want to get something better, and you definitely get that in this game. After you've loaded the trains, you deliver to locations and you get to collect that location. You gain points by doing so. It's also the mechanism that will eventually end the game. You also deliver passengers to these same locations as well. Once they fill up, that also pushes forward the game. Overall, I felt like it had really nice balance. My wife absolutely destroyed me on it, but you know, she typically does, especially early on in games. I got to figure out the strategy on this one, and that's Isle of Trains All Aboard. I think it's a pretty good game. We're definitely going to keep it in the collection. I'm at least going to get, you know, the 10 or 15 plays out of it. Here we go. Next Station Tokyo. We have basically a cabinet full of roll and write, flip and writes. We need another flip and write like we need a hole in the head. We also don't have a deficiency in our collection for train and route building. If you love that type of thing, Next Station Tokyo is a great pickup. This comes to us from Blue Orange, designed by Matthew Dunstan, and it's a predecessor to Next Station London. I have never played Next Station London, but just looking at the map and reading some comments, it sounds like the map on this guy is a little more advanced. It's mimicking the subways in Tokyo, which is a notorious web of craziness. But in this game, you essentially just flip a card and draw the line. There's 4 color pencils, and each round you draw with a new color pencil, and it's kind of signifying a totally new line. After each round, you tally up points in regards to that color line, and then move on to the next round. It's 4 rounds, and then the game's over. It's really, really fast. So depending on what colored pencil you have is where you start on the map, and then a card is flipped and you have to draw a line to that symbol. This is really about thinking ahead and kind of mitigating against those cards, even though there's no real mitigation other than a couple of specialty cards that pop up that allow you to either trace back on a previous route or have a branch off of the route that you're currently building. But the rules basically are is you not cross another route that you've previously drawn and start from either end of that line that you're building. So you can't spider off unless that aforementioned card comes up, or double back. Once you draw the 5th green card, the round is over. At that time, you tally the number of districts that you visited, which if you look at the map, the yellow lines denote different districts. And then you look intra-district and find the district that you visited the most stations in, and you multiply those 2 numbers. Rinse and repeat over 4 rounds, and that's the end of the game. There's also one more form of intra-game scoring, which is if you have different color lines intersect at a station in these outer districts, then you get bonus points. And then the endgame points are intersections in which you've had 3 or more colors intersecting. And you can go up to 5 colors, and that's because every map starts with this green line, and that counts as a route that's already been built. And lining that green route that's already there are stations. If you don't visit any of those, it's -3 points per. There's an inter-round friction where you're trying to visit as many districts as possible, yet really populate one district so you can maximize that math problem. But then at the same time, you're trying to find intersections, and the further you go out, if you can get to those corner sections and get an intersection there, it's 10 points. It's competing. On the near term, you definitely get incentivized to kind of cluster your moves, but on the long term, you also want to kind of make it to those outside areas. And then also make sure you're trying to hit as many of the stations along that green line as possible so you don't get negative points. You can see it's a really thinky puzzle, but it's as simple as draw a card, draw a line. And to me is a really special category of game where I can get new players or even kids to the table, but I can still feel challenged and kind of doing my own puzzle. And I don't have to explain a ton of rules, nuances, and overhead. And that's it. Those are the 3 small box board games that I'm playing right now. I really like all of them. If they sound interesting to you, go check your FLGS. See if they're in there. If you're not and you don't mind supporting me, I have some affiliate links down below. You can check them out there. And on that note, I really appreciate that you've made it this far. If you have, maybe think about subscribing. I have a lot more content planned here and a ton of plans for this channel moving forward. But either way, thanks for watching. Have a good day.